Mia Johnson arrived at Lincoln High School on a chilly Monday morning in early October. The overcast sky matched her mood as her mother's old Honda Civic sputtered away from the curb, leaving behind a small cloud of gray exhaust. Clutching her worn-out backpack against her chest, Mia's fingers absent-mindedly traced the patches her grandmother had sewn over its many holes. At 17, she had already attended 4 different schools across 3 states, each move dictated by her mother's relentless search for better-paying nursing jobs after her father's untimely death 5 years ago. The towering red brick facade of Lincoln High loomed ahead like an unwelcoming fortress. Clusters of students swarmed past her, their designer clothes and animated laughter creating an invisible barrier that Mia knew would be difficult to cross. She had learned long ago that being the new kid meant that invisibility was often safer than drawing attention. And being black in a predominantly white school added yet another complicated layer to that invisibility, a careful balancing act of not standing out enough to become a target but not blending in so much as to completely disappear. After 10 minutes of wandering the identical hallways, Mia finally located the main office. The fluorescent lights buzzed softly overhead, casting harsh shadows on the disinterested faces around her. A middle-aged secretary with perfectly styled blonde hair glanced up from her computer with a tight smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "You must be Mia Johnson," she said, her voice pronouncing the name like it was something foreign. "Here's your schedule. First class is AP History with Mr. Peterson, room 203. Try not to be late." Her dismissal was immediate and unmistakable. Mia accepted the schedule and made her way into the crowded hallways, keeping her eyes down and whispering room numbers under her breath as she passed each door. When she reached room 203, the door was already closed. Through the small window, she could see Mr. Peterson animatedly lecturing while students leaned forward, absorbed in his lesson. She knocked softly, then a bit louder when there was no response. The door opened, and 30 pairs of eyes swung toward her. Mr. Peterson, a tall man with graying temples and kind eyes behind his wire-rimmed glasses, greeted her warmly. "You must be our new student, Mia, right? Come in, come in. Class, this is Mia Johnson joining us from—" he glanced at the roster in his hand. "Chicago. Let's make her feel welcome." A few scattered, half-hearted greetings mumbled through the room as Mia walked to the only empty seat middle row, right-sided directly in front of Brandon Walker. She sensed his presence before she even looked at him. That peculiar energy of someone who had always been the center of attention, always accustomed to people moving out of his way. As she sat down, she heard his chair scrape backward, followed by a soft, mocking whistle. "Charity case, huh, Mr. Peterson? You taking in strays now?" Brandon's voice was loud enough to carry across the room, yet calculated to maintain plausible deniability. Nervous chuckles rippled through the class. "Mr. Peterson's expression hardened immediately. "Mr. Walker, that's your first and only warning. Another comment like that, and you'll be explaining yourself to Principal Edwards." Brandon raised his hands in mock surrender, his piercing blue eyes glittering with amusement. "Just making conversation, Mr. P, trying to be welcoming, like you said." Mia kept her eyes forward, her posture rigid even as heat crept up her neck. She had heard worse before, endured worse. But something about Brandon's casual cruelty, easy confidence of someone who had never faced real consequences, made her fingers tighten around her pencil until her knuckles ached. The rest of class passed in a blur. She took neat, precise notessa habit instilled by her mother, who always told her that education was the one thing no one could ever take away. But she could feel Brandon's eyes boring into the back of her head and hear his whispers to his friends, Sean and Kevin, punctuated by their quiet snickers. The irony of being targeted during a lesson on the civil rights movement was not lost on her. When the bell rang, she quickly gathered her belongings, hoping to slip away unnoticed, but Brandon was already standing, his 6'2" frame blocking her path. "Hey, charity case," he said loudly, ensuring the few remaining students could hear. "Where you running off to? Don't they teach manners in Chicago?" Mia looked up at him for the first time, really seeing him. Brandon Walker was exactly what her grandmother would have called trouble, wrapped in privilege, the star quarterback, son of a high-powered attorney and a real estate mogul, the kind of kid who had been told he was special from birth. His perfectly styled blonde hair and perfectly tailored Letterman jacket were as much a part of him as his smug grin. "Excuse me," she said softly, attempting to sidestep him, but he moved with her, maintaining the blockade. "I'm talking to you. See, Lincoln High has certain standards, certain expectations. And you?" His gaze raked over her faded jeans and second-hand sneakers. "You're lowering the property value just by breathing the same air." "Mr. Walker." Mr. Peterson's voice sliced through the tension. "You have somewhere to be." Brandon's smile remained fixed. "Sure thing, Mr. P, just being friendly." As he passed, he bumped her shoulder hard enough to make her stumble slightly. "See you around, Charity Case." Sean and Kevin followed, their laughter echoing off the lockers. Mia stood frozen, her hands trembling with contained fury. Mr. Peterson approached quietly. "I'm sorry about that," he said with genuine regret. "Brandon can be difficult. If he gives you any more trouble, come see me. My door's always open." She nodded, not trusting her voice, and quickly walked to her next class. The pattern continued throughout the day: whispers in each classroom, sideways glances, and silent judgments. At lunch, she sat alone at a corner table, picking at the free meal that only marked her difference more boldly. Meanwhile, Brandon held court at the center table, surrounded by his entourage of football players and cheerleaders. Though she couldn't hear everything he said, the stolen glances and bursts of laughter directed her way made the topic obvious. By the end of the day, exhaustion weighed on Mia in ways that had nothing to do with academics. She approached her locker and spun the combination effortlessly, a skill honed from too many school transfers. But when she opened it, a bold note taped inside greeted her: "Go back to where you came from." Her stomach twisted. She crumpled the note and shoved it into her pocket, keeping her expression neutral. As she gathered her books, she sensed a presence behind her. The mirror inside her locker reflected Brandon and his crew approaching. "Hey, Charity Case," Brandon mocked. "Find any food stamps in there? Maybe a welfare check?" She closed her locker and turned, her face an unreadable mask. "What do you want?" "What do I want?" Brandon laughed, exchanging glances with Sean and Kevin, as if she had just told a joke. "I want to know why Peterson expects us to sit in class with someone who probably can't even afford the textbooks. Why my parents' tax dollars are being wasted on people like you." Mia's voice was steady. "People like me?" "Yeah," he sneered, stepping closer, his breath laced with expensive cologne and mint gum. "People who don't belong, people who drag everyone else down, people who should know their place." Sean let out a low whistle. "Damn, Brandon. Tell her how you really feel." "I'm just being honest," Brandon continued, eyes locked on hers. "Lincoln High's full of kids bound for Ivy League schools, kids who will run companies and countries. And then there's you, thrift store clothes, free lunches, no future." He flicked her backpack strap dismissively. "You're like a stain on a white shirt," Kevin eagerly echoed him. "Yeah, and stains need to be scrubbed out." Mia felt something stir deep inside her chest, a familiar tightening she recognized from years of judo training. Her sensei's voice echoed. "Anger is fire. Controlled, it forges steel. Uncontrolled, it consumes everything." She took a steadying breath. "Are you done?" Brandon blinked, surprised by her calm. "What?" "I asked if you were done," she repeated as she adjusted her backpack. "Because I have a bus to catch, and listening to you struggle to sound intelligent is making me late." Sean made an exaggerated ooh sound, nudging Brandon. "Yo, she's got jokes." Brandon's face darkened. "You think you're funny?" "No," Mia answered flatly. "I think you're boring. I've met guys like you at every school I've attended. Same weak insults. Same need to make yourself feel big by making others feel small. The only difference is the zip code." She tried to step around them, but Brandon grabbed her arm, his grip tightening painfully. "I'm not done talking to you." Time seemed to slow. Mia looked at his hand, then at his face. She could break his hold in 3 ways, drop him to the ground in 2, and leave him with lasting regret in 1, but she held herself back. "Let go." "Or what?" Brandon challenged, squeezing harder. "What are you going to do, Charity Case? Call for help? No one here is going to help you. You're nothing." "Mr. Walker," a sharp voice rang out. "Mrs. Sanchez, the vice principal, rounded the corner with laser-like eyes that missed nothing. "Is there a problem here?" "No problem, Mrs. S," Brandon answered smoothly, instantly switching to his charming facade. "Just welcoming our new student, right, Mia?" All eyes turned to her, waiting for her to play along, to lie, to make it easier. "Right," Mia said bitterly, hating herself for complying. Mrs. Sanchez eyed them both before nodding. "Good. Brandon, don't you have practice? I'm sure Coach wouldn't appreciate you being late." "On my way," Brandon flashed a smug grin. See you tomorrow, Mia. Can't wait to get to know you better." The threat in his words hung heavy. That night, Mia sat on her bed, staring at the fresh bruises forming on her arm, a perfect imprint of his fingers. She heard her mother return from another exhausting double shift at the hospital. The small apartment offered little privacy. Mia pulled her sleeves down and pretended to sleep as her mother peeked in. "Love you, baby," her mother whispered into the darkness. "Love you too, Mom," Mia whispered back. But she stayed awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, planning. Brandon Walker thought she was nobody, powerless, silent, weak. He had no idea how wrong he was. The next morning, Mia dressed with careful intention. She chose long sleeves to conceal the bruises blossoming on her arm, pulled her hair into a tight bun that offered nothing for anyone to grab, and slipped into her most comfortable jeans, just in case she needed to move quickly. Standing in front of the cracked bathroom mirror, she studied her reflection, seeing not just herself but echoes of her late father, his determined jaw, the fierce steadiness in his eyes that could shift from warm to dangerous in a heartbeat. Quietly, she whispered the words her sensei had drilled into her since her very first day in the dojo: never start a fight, but always know how to end one. She arrived at school earlier than usual, hoping to avoid Brandon and his crew before first period. But as she rounded the corner toward her locker, her heart sank. They were already there, waiting for her. Brandon leaned casually against her locker, a smug grin playing across his face while he tossed something back and forth between his hands. As Mia drew closer, she realized with a sickening twist that it was her combination lock, snapped clean through. "Morning, charity case." Brandon greeted her with exaggerated cheerfulness. "Hope you don't mind, but we decided your locker was dragging down the property value. Thought a little early morning cleaning was in order." Her locker door hung wide open, its contents strewn across the hallway floor. Textbooks were torn and crumpled, pages ripped and defaced. Her spare set of gym clothes lay in a damp, reeking pile, the pungent stench of spoiled chocolate milk rising from them. "Oops," Sean said with mock sympathy. "Looks like my milk had a little accident." Kevin stood nearby, phone in hand, recording every second with a grin stretched wide across his face. "This is gonna be legendary," he chuckled. Mia stood completely still, her breathing steady as her eyes cataloged the damage. 3 ruined textbooks, each costing over $60, money her mother certainly didn't have to spare. Weeks of meticulously written notes destroyed. Her gym clothes, the only spare set she owned, now unusable. Her jaw clenched, but she forced her expression to remain neutral. Brandon stepped closer, lowering his voice to a sinister whisper meant only for her ears. "What's wrong? Gonna cry? Gonna run to the principal? Or maybe—" His hand reached toward her face, fingers poised as if to deliver another lesson in dominance. That was the breaking point. Her breathing slowed, muscles coiling like a spring. Every lesson, every hour spent training under Master Lee rushed through her in a flood of muscle memory. Without conscious thought, she caught Brandon's wrist in a firm grip that made him gasp. Her thumb expertly pressed a nerve point on the inside of his arm, sending a jolt of pain up his limb. His eyes widened in shock as he struggled to pull away, but she held him in place, applying just enough pressure to keep him immobilized without causing true harm. "I said," Mia repeated softly, her voice calm yet razor-sharp, "don't touch me." Brandon snarled, attempting to yank his arm free, but Mia's grip was like iron. Sean stepped forward, alarm flashing across his face, but Kevin grabbed his sleeve. "Dude, she's doing some kung fu or something," Kevin hissed, eyes wide as he continued filming. Brandon, his face flushed with rage, lashed out with his free hand in a wild, clumsy punch, a haymaker so poorly executed it practically announced itself before it even left his shoulder. Mia released his wrist and stepped inside his reach in one smooth, fluid motion. Her hips pivoted as her hands guided his momentum upward and over. Years of practice took over. The world spun wildly for Brandon as his feet left the ground, his brain barely able to process what was happening before his back collided with the floor in a thunderous smack that echoed through the hallway. For a moment, he lay there gasping like a fish out of water, eyes staring up at the ceiling's harsh fluorescent lights as the air rushed out of his lungs. Around them, the early morning crowd of students froze in shock. Dozens of phones captured every angle, every second, documenting the event in high-definition clarity. Mia stood over him, her breathing even, her posture relaxed but ready. She glanced briefly at Sean and Kevin, both of whom stared at her like they were seeing a ghost. I've been doing judo since I was 9, Mia said, her voice casual, almost conversational. My sensei always said judo is about using your opponent's strength against them. The bigger they are, the harder they fall. She paused, tilting her head slightly. I guess he was right. Brandon rolled onto his side, coughing and gasping for breath. You're dead. Do you have any idea who my father is? Oh, I know exactly who your father is, Mia replied, crouching down so only he could hear her next words. That's good. He'll be able to explain the difference between assault and self-defense to you. You grabbed me yesterday. You grabbed me again today. And all these people, she gestured toward the growing crowd of students filming. They saw everything, recorded everything. Vandalism, assault, harassment, and now, attempted battery. A voice broke through the tense silence. She's right. Everyone turned to see Daniel Matthews, president of the debate club and already accepted into Yale, push through the crowd. My mom's a judge. What Brandon did constitutes multiple criminal offenses. What Mia did, that's self-defense by the book. Shut up, Daniel, Sean growled, though his voice lacked its usual venom. The balance of power was shifting rapidly, and everyone could feel it. Brandon struggled to his feet, face red with humiliation. This isn't over. Actually, came a sharp voice that sliced through the growing murmurs like a blade. It is. The crowd parted as misses. Sanchez marched forward, flanked by 2 campus security officers and Principal Edwards himself. She surveyed the scene with her sharp eyes, taking in the torn books, the spilled milk, Brandon's disheveled state, and Mia standing calm in the middle of it all. Everyone who recorded this, do not delete your videos. We'll need them for the investigation, Mrs. Sanchez ordered. She turned to Brandon, Sean, and Kevin. You 3 principal's office, now. But Shesh assaulted me, Brandon sputtered. We have 6 different angles of footage already submitted, Mrs. Sanchez said, unimpressed. Would you like to change your story before we review them all? Brandon's jaw worked furiously, but no words came out. For perhaps the first time in his life, his privilege wasn't enough to shield him. Principal Edwards addressed Mia with a gentler tone. Are you hurt, Mia? She shook her head. No, sir. Good. We'll need a statement from you, but first, head to the counselor's office. We'll have someone replace your books and clean up this mess. As Brandon and his cronies were escorted away, the crowd began to disperse, though not before several students approached Mia, offering whispered words of support. That was incredible, one girl said. He's been terrorizing people for years. About time someone stood up to him. He poured paint in my locker freshman year just because I beat him on a test, another student confessed. Broke my phone when I wouldn't let him cheat off my homework, someone else added. Started rumors about me to ruin my reputation, a third said softly. Story after story painted a chilling picture of Brandon's unchecked reign of cruelty, enabled by his family's influence. Mia finally asked, why didn't anyone report him before? The group exchanged uneasy glances before Daniel answered. His dad, Charles Walker, is one of the school board's top attorneys. His mom's on the board itself. Complaining about Brandon usually meant you ended up in trouble, your sulson disciplinary actions, lost honors classes, scholarship applications mysteriously delayed. But you flipped the script. Literally, the girl with the painted locker said, her voice tinged with awe. And with all these videos, they can't sweep it under the rug this time. That afternoon, Mia was summoned to the principal's office. She braced herself for the worst. Despite having acted in self-defense, her experiences had taught her that the system rarely protected kids like her. But when she walked in, she was surprised to find her mother already there, still in her hospital scrubs from a hastily shortened shift. Principal Edwards and Mrs. Sanchez sat across the desk, papers spread neatly before them. Mom, Mia said, her voice catching slightly. Her mother pulled her into a fierce hug. Baby, are you okay? They called me, told me what happened. I'm fine. I'm sorry, Mom. I know you always told me to keep my head down. Don't you dare apologize, her mother interrupted, eyes blazing. That boy put his hands on you. You defended yourself. I'm proud of you. Principal Edwards cleared his throat. Mrs. Johnson, after reviewing all video evidence and numerous student statements, it's clear Brandon Walker was the aggressor. Mia demonstrated remarkable restraint, considering her training. 8 years of judo, Mrs. Sanchez added with what sounded almost like admiration. Multiple state championships in Illinois, if I'm not mistaken. Mia shrugged. It didn't seem relevant on my enrollment forms. Well, it's very relevant now, Principal Edwards said firmly. Brandon Walker and his associates have been suspended pending a full investigation. Furthermore, we've received multiple corroborating testimonies about Brandon's behavior dating back several years. Her mother's face stiffened with concern. What about retaliation? His family has money, power. Which is precisely why we're proceeding meticulously and by the book, Mrs. Sanchez assured her. The video evidence is irrefutable. The school board is far more concerned about a potential lawsuit for enabling years of unchecked bullying than preserving the Walkers' donations. She slid a paper across the desk. This is a formal apology from the school for failing to provide Mia with a safe learning environment. We're replacing all damaged property at the school's expense and relocating her locker to a more secure, supervised area. And Brandon? Mia asked quietly. Principal Edwards' face darkened. He'll face consequences. For the first time in his life. As they exited the office together, her mother squeezed Mia's hand. I'm sorry I ever told you to stay invisible. I thought it would keep you safe. But maybe, just maybe, what you did today will make it safer for everyone. By the next morning, Lincoln High was buzzing with an energy Mia had never experienced before. The video of Brandon's takedown had spread like wildfire overnight. Clips of her judo flips circulated through every hallway, every social media platform, and every group chat. Some students whispered legend as she passed, others nodded at her with newfound respect. For the first time in her life, Mia wasn't invisible. But visibility came with its own kind of danger. During lunch, Daniel approached her table, scrolling through his phone with a concerned expression. You need to see this, he said, sliding into the seat across from her. Mia leaned in, her stomach already sinking. Daniel opened a video that had been posted that morning. On screen sat Brandon in what looked like a professionally staged home office, his face arranged in an expression of forced sincerity. Around his neck was a bulky brace that Mia immediately knew was unnecessary. I just wanted to welcome the new student, Brandon said, his voice carefully modulated to sound vulnerable and victimized. Yes, maybe my jokes went too far, but I never imagined she would respond with such violence. I'm an athlete, body is my future. She could have ended my career, all because of a misunderstanding. Mia clenched her jaw. A misunderstanding? He destroyed my stuff and grabbed me. Twice. Daniel sighed and swiped to another video. It gets worse. The screen now showed Brandon's father, Charles Walker, seated behind a massive mahogany desk, oozing authority and menace as cameras recorded his statement. Lincoln High has failed to protect its students, Charles declared. My son was assaulted on school grounds by a student who failed to disclose extensive martial arts training upon enrollment. This is no different than allowing a student to carry a concealed weapon on campus. We are exploring all legal options to ensure the safety of every student, including my son. Mia's stomach twisted into knots. He's trying to get me expelled, she whispered. Worse, Daniel corrected, his voice low. He's laying the groundwork to get you arrested. Mia felt her throat tighten. My mom can't afford a lawyer. We don't have. She trailed off, not wanting to admit out loud how little they had. You've got us, a firm voice said. Mia turned to see Emily and a group of nearly 20 students gathering around the table, many of them wearing matching t-shirts printed with bold letters. Number Team Mia. Are you serious? Mia asked, stunned. Dead serious, Emily replied. We've been organizing since yesterday. Brandon's gotten away with this garbage for years, but this time, he picked the wrong person. Another student, Jason, chimed in. My older brother's a civil rights attorney in the city. He says the Walkers' PR stunt might actually open them up to harassment and defamation charges. He's willing to help pro bono if needed. Mia blinked back tears. For years, she had been the outsider, the invisible girl in the corner. Now, these people were standing with her. I don't even know what to say. Just say you'll let us help, Emily said firmly. Brandon's had his crew for years. Now you've got yours. The rest of the school day passed under a strange, tense cloud. Mia noticed increased security stationed in every hallway. Teachers seemed to have become hyper-vigilant, and Principal Edwards himself could be seen regularly walking the corridors. But Brandon was smarter than to lash out directly again. Instead, the next attack came from an unexpected angle. During third-period chemistry, Mrs. Patterson received a phone call that left her face visibly tense. Mia, she called out, trying to keep her voice calm. "The office needs to see you. Bring your things." The walk to the office felt like a funeral procession. Students peeked out of their classrooms as she passed, the news spreading through the grapevine before she had even arrived. When she stepped inside, her heart plummeted. The room was filled with people. Principal Edwards sat behind his desk looking grave. Mrs. Sanchez stood off to the side with crossed arms. But it was the two uniformed police officers and the woman in the severe navy suit who made Mia's stomach clench. "Miss Johnson," the woman said, her voice clipped and professional. "I'm Patricia Morse. I represent the Walker family. We are here because my client has filed a formal complaint regarding the assault that took place on school property." "It was self-defense," Mia said instantly, trying to keep her voice steady. "That's for the courts to decide," Patricia Morse replied coolly. "In the meantime, we're requesting that you be immediately removed from school property for the safety of other students." "This is absurd," Mrs. Sanchez interrupted sharply. "We have video evidence. Video evidence that shows Miss Johnson using potentially lethal force against an unarmed student." Patricia cut her off. "A student who may suffer permanent spinal damage from the attack." "That's a lie," Mia blurted out. "I used a basic hip throw. He landed flat on his back, not his head or neck. If he has spinal damage, it's from something else entirely." One of the police officers, a black woman named Officer Williams, spoke up gently. "We're not here to arrest anyone at this stage. This is a preliminary investigation. Miss Johnson, can you tell us about your martial arts background?" Mia straightened in her chair. "I've studied Judo for 8 years. I'm a second-degree black belt under Master Lee from Chicago. I've competed at state-level tournaments and won multiple championships." "And this training includes techniques that could cause serious harm, does it not?" Patricia pushed. "Every martial art includes dangerous techniques," Mia replied evenly. "But from day one, we're taught to use only the minimum force necessary to protect ourselves. What I used on Brandon was the absolute minimum required to stop his attack." "You threw my client onto a concrete floor," Patricia argued. "I redirected his momentum using his own force," Mia countered. "And I landed him flat on his back, specifically to avoid injury. If I had wanted to hurt him, believe me, I could have." "Is that a threat?" Patricia pounced instantly. "It's a fact," Mia answered, her voice unwavering. Principal Edwards leaned forward. "And that fact actually supports Miss Johnson's restraint." "Officer Williams?" Having reviewed the videos, Officer Williams said professionally, "I see clear self-defense, Mr. Walker initiated contact both physically and verbally, attempted to strike her, and Miss Johnson responded with controlled force. In my professional opinion, it was minimal and entirely appropriate." Patricia's expression tightened. She produced a tablet and displayed photos of Brandon's bruised torso. "My client is covered in extensive bruises, officer. Does that look minimal to you?" Officer Williams examined the images closely. "Ma'am, with all due respect, I've worked dozens of assault cases. Those bruises aren't consistent with a simple throw. Frankly, they appear to be older than 3 days. They resemble injuries from previous contact sports or other physical altercations." The room grew still. Principal Edwards cleared his throat. "Given that there is no immediate threat, and this matter clearly belongs in a courtroom rather than an administrative office, I see no reason to remove Miss Johnson from school property at this time." Patricia Morse's face hardened. "This isn't over," she hissed. "We will pursue this matter through proper legal channels, and I strongly advise Miss Johnson to secure legal counsel." Once the lawyer and police had left, Mia sagged in her chair, finally allowing the tension to show. "My mom can't afford a lawyer," she whispered. "Already handled," Mrs. Sanchez said, surprising Mia. "Daniel's brother isn't the only attorney who's offered to help. Turns out quite a few Lincoln High alumni have their own stories about Brandon Walkerand. They're very motivated to make sure justice is finally served." Mia looked between them, confused. "Why are you helping me? I've only been here a month. I'm nobody." Principal Edwards leaned forward, his voice gentle but firm. "Miss Johnson, in the last 3 years, we've had 47 complaints filed against Brandon Walker. 47. And every single one was withdrawn or buried under pressure from his family's influence. You are the first person who stood up to him in a way that can't be covered up or manipulated. You gave others courage. Do you know how many students have come forward this week?" Mrs. Sanchez added. "Not just about Brandon, but about other bullies too. You started something we've been trying to accomplish for years. Real change. When Mia stepped back out into the hallway, she was stunned to find dozens of students waiting. As soon as they saw her, spontaneous applause erupted, echoing through the corridor. "Yo, Mia," someone shouted. "Is it true they tried to get you arrested?" "My cousin works at the urgent care Brandon visited," another student added. Said he walked in fine but suddenly needed a neck brace after finding out the cameras caught everything. The story spread like wildfire, each retelling adding more fuel to the growing inferno. By lunchtime, 2 new hashtags were trending locally, number Team Mia and number Brandon the Faker. Emily caught up with her in the cafeteria. Emergency meeting after school. "We're organizing a peaceful protest for Monday. If the walkers want to play dirty, we'll show them what solidarity looks like." "I don't want anyone getting in trouble for me," Mia protested. "This isn't just about you anymore," Emily said, her voice steady and fierce. "This is about every kid Brandon ever tormented. Every complaint that got buried. Every time money mattered more than justice. You were the spark. We're the fire." Over the weekend, Lincoln High transformed from a typical suburban high school into the center of an escalating war that now reached far beyond its red brick walls. Social media feeds overflowed with new testimonies from former students, parents, and even community members, all adding to the growing pile of evidence and public outrage against the walkers. Local news outlets picked up the story, presenting it as a classic David versus Goliath narrative, a struggling single-parent family versus one of the town's wealthiest, most powerful dynasties. Yet while the public tide was turning in Mia's favor, the walkers refused to back down. Sunday evening, Mia sat at the small kitchen table with her mother, eating a quiet dinner. The television in the corner flickered with the evening news. Once again, Charles Walker's face filled the screen. He appeared calm, collected, and utterly calculated as he addressed a row of reporters gathered outside his law office. "We believe the administration at Lincoln High has been negligent in protecting students from violent individuals," he stated with an air of controlled outrage. "We will be filing a formal lawsuit against both the school district and Mia Johnson for failing to disclose her extensive, dangerous martial arts training prior to her enrollment. This isn't just about my son anymore. It's about ensuring that every parent can trust that their children are safe when they walk into those hallways." Mia's mother slammed her fork down onto the plate. "Dangerous? That man makes it sound like you walked into school with a loaded gun." "It's working though," Mia whispered, her chest tightening. "People who don't know the full story are buying it." Her mother reached across the table, taking Mia's hand. "We'll get through this, baby. I promise." But Mia could see the worry behind her mother's brave face. Monday morning, the air around Lincoln High was electric. Security presence had been doubled. Reporters lined the sidewalk outside the school gates. Protesters, some holding number Team Mia signs, others with banners supporting the walker, stood on opposite sides of the entrance, yelling chants at one another. The planned student protest was in full swing. Hundreds of students wore black armbands in solidarity with Mia, standing silently in the courtyard with signs reading, "Justice for Mia" and "Bullying ends here." Emily, Daniel, and the rest of the organizing committee had worked through the weekend to coordinate the peaceful demonstration, ensuring that no one crossed any lines that could lead to suspensions or arrests. Principal Edwards and Mrs. Sanchez stood near the main entrance, monitoring everything with sharp eyes but allowing the students to exercise their rights. "You okay?" Emily asked as Mia walked up, looking like she hadn't slept in days. "Honestly, no," Mia admitted. "But seeing all of this, it helps." Emily squeezed her arm. "We've got your back." The morning passed in tense silence, teachers doing their best to proceed as though the school wasn't sitting at the center of a legal hurricane. But everyone knew something bigger was coming. By third period, it arrived. The intercom crackled to life, and Principal Edwards' voice rang through the classrooms. "Mia Johnson, please report to the office immediately." Every head in the classroom turned toward her. Mia gathered her things, feeling the weight of every set of eyes following her as she walked out the door. When she entered the office, the tension was thick enough to cut. Principal Edwards sat behind his desk, face lined with stress. Mrs. Sanchez stood stiffly to his right. Seated across from them were 2 new figures. One was a stern-looking man in a tailored suit who Mia instantly recognized as a district representative. The other was Patricia Morse, back again, her eyes gleaming with cold satisfaction. This time, 2 additional police officers flanked the door. "Miss Johnson," the district rep began, his voice deliberately neutral, We've received updated legal filings from the Walker family. Effective immediately, and upon advice from District Council, we are suspending your enrollment at Lincoln High, pending full investigation into these serious allegations. Mia's mouth went dry. You can't be serious. This is completely unjustified, Mrs. Sanchez snapped. You have video evidence showing clear self-defense. Patricia smiled slightly. And yet, the district feels that allowing a student trained in advanced combat techniques to remain on campus poses an ongoing safety concern. I've been training in Judo to defend myself, not to attack people. Mia shot back. Brandon initiated everything. Officer Williams, standing nearby once again, stepped forward cautiously. With all due respect, Superintendent Harris, this does not appear to be a criminal matter. The videos clearly show. Thank you, Officer Williams, but this is an administrative decision, not a criminal one at this stage. Harris interrupted smoothly. Miss Johnson, I'm afraid you'll need to gather your personal belongings and leave school grounds until this matter is resolved legally. Patricia's satisfied expression made Mia's stomach turn. This is exactly what they wanted from the beginning, Mia whispered. You couldn't break me physically, so you're trying to destroy me academically. Harris gave no reaction, simply gesturing toward the officers. Please escort Miss Johnson while she retrieves her things. Mia's legs felt like lead as she stood. Her mother would be notified, but for now, she was on her own. Students lining the hallways stared as the officers followed her down the corridors, whispers trailing behind them like smoke. Emily intercepted her by the lockers. Mia, what's happening? They're suspending me. Mia's voice trembled for the first time since this all began. They're forcing me out while they pretend to investigate. That's insane, Emily hissed, her face flushed with anger. We'll fight this. We'll get every parent, every lawyer, every reporter involved. They won't get away with this. I know, Mia whispered, but right now, I have to go. By the time Mia left the building, dozens of students had poured into the courtyard, chanting, "Let Mia stay." As reporters swarmed the front gates, the police officers led her through the crowd like she was some criminal being walked on national television. Cameras flashed, microphones were shoved in her face. Do you have anything to say, Mia? A reporter shouted. Mia paused for one brief second, looking directly into the nearest camera. The only thing I did was stand up for myself, she said. I protected myself from a bully. If that's grounds for suspension, what message does this school send to every kid who's ever been bullied? The crowd erupted in applause as the officers quickly hurried her into her mother's waiting car. That night, Mia sat silently on the couch while her mother spoke in hushed, rapid tones on the phone with one of the volunteer attorneys who had stepped forward. Daniel's brother, Emily's cousin, even several alumni who had experienced Brandon's bullying years ago had now connected with legal advocates willing to fight. The small living room had become a legal war room. The Walkers are playing every angle they can, Daniel's brother explained. They know their criminal case is weak, so they're going for administrative suspension to isolate you and weaken your position. But their house of cards is getting shaky. The more attention this draws, the more their strategy backfires. They're trying to exhaust us financially, Mia's mother added bitterly. They assume we'll fold before we can afford to fight back. That's why you have us, the lawyer assured them. We're not backing down. Mia's phone buzzed with notifications non-stop. The hashtags number Let Mia Stay and number Justice for Mia were trending. Local parents were rallying. Former victims of Brandon were emailing the school board. The mayor had even issued a statement expressing concern over the district's handling of the situation. The pressure was building. But so was the danger. Tuesday morning brought yet another escalation. This time, Mia wasn't called to school, her mother was. When she arrived, she found Patricia Morse already waiting with an entirely new stack of legal filings. The Walkers have filed an emergency injunction, Patricia explained smoothly. They are petitioning the family court to obtain a restraining order against Mia on Brandon's behalf. If granted, Mia would be legally prohibited from setting foot on any school district property. You've got to be kidding me, Mia's mother exploded. You're treating my daughter like she's some kind of threat to society because she defended herself. That's for the judge to decide, Patricia said coldly. We'll see you both in court tomorrow. As they left the office, Mia's mother squeezed her hand tightly. They're trying to break you, she said. But we won't let them. I'm not breaking, Mia whispered. Not for them. Wednesday morning arrived with an unusual stillness that wrapped itself around Mia like a heavy fog. The courthouse loomed before her like yet another fortress of power and influence, its towering columns radiating the kind of authority designed to intimidate ordinary people. Mia stood silently beside her mother, both of them clutching hands tightly as they entered the courtroom, flanked by Daniel's brother, Marcus Chen, and the pro bono legal team that had assembled around them in recent weeks. The Walkers were already seated at the opposing table. Charles Walker radiated cold confidence in his expensive tailored suit, while Brandon sat next to him, wearing the same unnecessary neck brace he'd sported in earlier interviews, his face carefully arranged in an expression of suffering. Patricia Morse stood beside them, organizing her documents with mechanical precision. Mia could feel dozens of eyes following her every move. Reporters sat clustered in the back rows, scribbling notes and quietly snapping photos despite the judge's warnings. As the hearing began, Patricia launched into her argument with surgical precision. "Your Honor, this matter is not about retaliation for prior events or public sympathy. This is about safety. My client, Brandon Walker, has been subjected to an unprovoked, violent assault by Miss Johnson, a student who failed to disclose advanced combat training during enrollment. Given her proficiency in martial arts and the severity of my client's injuries, we are requesting a restraining order that would bar Miss Johnson from coming within 500 feet of Brandon Walker and any district property where he may be present." Marcus stood up smoothly when it was his turn to respond. "Your Honor, what the Walkers continue to omit is that we have multiple video recordings from numerous angles, submitted by dozens of witnesses, that clearly demonstrate my client was the victim of repeated harassment, property destruction, and physical assault by Brandon Walker. Miss Johnson acted only in self-defense, using minimal force after Mr. Walker physically grabbed and threatened her on multiple occasions. This restraining order is nothing more than an attempt to silence and punish her further for standing up against years of unchecked bullying." The judge, an older woman with sharp eyes and an air of no-nonsense authority, listened intently, tapping her pen against the desk as she flipped through the evidence files. "I have reviewed the submitted videos, the prior complaints filed against Mr. Walker, and the series of witness statements provided by the school district," she said firmly. "I also note that the district itself has since acknowledged failures in properly addressing prior complaints of bullying involving Mr. Walker." Charles Walker's jaw tightened, but he remained outwardly calm. Patricia made one last desperate push. "Your Honor, we're not disputing Mr. Walker's past mistakes. However, the issue before us is the potential future danger posed by Miss Johnson's advanced martial arts skills that can inflict significant harm." The judge raised an eyebrow. "Miss Johnson, please stand." Mia rose slowly, trying to steady her breathing as she faced the judge directly. "Miss Johnson, you've been training in Judo for how long?" 8 years, Your Honor," Mia replied calmly. "And you are trained to use that knowledge responsibly?" "Yes, ma'am. From my first day, my sensei taught me that martial arts are not about fighting but about controlling situations to prevent harm. I applied the least amount of force necessary to protect myself. If I wanted to hurt Brandon, I could have, but I didn't. I made a choice to stop the threat without causing injury." The judge studied her for a long moment. "And you have no history of prior violence, correct?" "No, ma'am. I've never hurt anyone before. I've never even been in a fight outside of competition." After a pause, the judge spoke with quiet finality. "Request for a restraining order denied." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Patricia blinked, momentarily speechless, while Charles Walker's face hardened with quiet fury. The judge continued, her voice cutting through the room. "This court will not reward a pattern of bullying and intimidation by penalizing a student who clearly demonstrated remarkable restraint under repeated provocation. The evidence overwhelmingly shows that Miss Johnson acted in self-defense. Furthermore, I am formally requesting that the school district review its prior handling of complaints involving Mr. Walker." As gavel struck wood, the hearing concluded. Mia exhaled, feeling the weight on her chest lighten ever so slightly. Her mother squeezed her hand as tears filled both their eyes. "You did it, baby," her mother whispered. "No, we did it," Mia whispered back. But even as the courtroom cleared and supporters gathered around her in celebration, Mia couldn't shake the feeling that the Walkers weren't finished yet. She was right. That afternoon, as they arrived back home, Mia received an unexpected phone call. The caller ID simply read, "Walker Residence." Against her better judgment, curiosity made her answer. "Mia, please don't hang up." Brandon's voice came through the line, sounding nothing like his usual smug self. Instead, his voice trembled with desperation. Mia stiffened. "Why are you calling me?" "Because I need your help," Brandon said, his words tumbling out quickly. "I know I'm the last person you want to hear from, but I'm serious. This is getting out of control." Mia's first instinct was to end the call, but something in his voice stopped her. "You're the one who started this, Brandon. You harassed me. You destroyed my property. You physically grabbed me twice. And now you're trying to get me thrown out of school." "I know," he said, his voice cracking. "I know everything I've done, and I know how wrong it all was. I didn't realize how far my dad would go to protect me. This isn't about me anymore, it's about him. He doesn't care who he destroys as long as he wins." "And you're just figuring this out?" Mia asked sharply. "No," Brandon admitted quietly. "I always knew who my father was. I just never cared until now." There was a long pause before he continued. "My little sister came home crying Friday. Kids at her school bullied her friend, called her names, and then said, 'What are you gonna do? Call your brother? He's the biggest bully in town.' She told my mom she was ashamed of me. My 12-year-old sister is ashamed of me. And she should be." Mia felt the breath catch in her chest. She hadn't expected this. "So why are you really calling me, Brandon?" "Because I want to make it right," he said. "I want to tell the truth publicly. Everything. How I started it, how I grabbed you, how I destroyed your locker, how my dad's been spinning lies ever since. I want to ruin his case and take away his leverage." "He'll destroy you for it," Mia warned. "I know," Brandon replied. "He already threatened to cut me off completely if I even suggested confessing, but I can't live with this anymore." There was a long silence between them. Finally, Mia said softly, "If you're serious, you're going to need your own lawyer. And you need to understand, once you go public, there's no undoing it." "I know," Brandon said. "I've already contacted my mom's divorce attorney. She's been gathering evidence against my father for years. This might be the push she needed to finally leave him." The following morning, Lincoln High witnessed something no one had ever imagined. Brandon Walker stood on the front steps of the school, alone, holding a microphone as dozens of students gathered to watch, their phones recording every second. His usual arrogance was gone, replaced by a hollow vulnerability that silenced the crowd. "I need to say something," Brandon began, his voice shaky but loud enough for everyone to hear. "Last week, I assaulted Mia Johnson. I grabbed her. I tried to hit her. She defended herself. Everything my father and our lawyer have been saying is a lie." Gasps echoed through the crowd. Students whispered furiously, cameras shaking in excited hands. But Brandon pressed on. "And that's not all. For years, I've made life miserable for anyone I thought was beneath me. I destroyed property, spread rumors, and hurt people because I could. Because my family's money always protected me. Because I was taught that some people matter and some don't." His eyes found Mia standing in the crowd, surrounded by her friends and supporters. "I was wrong about everything. Mia Johnson isn't a charity case or a nobody. She's someone who stood up to a bully when no one else could. And if anyone should be suspended or expelled, it's me, not her." A stunned hush fell over the courtyard as Brandon continued. "Effective immediately, I'm withdrawing from Lincoln High. I'll be finishing my senior year at Riverside Alternative while getting counseling for anger management and all the damage I've caused. To everyone I've hurt, I'm sorry. I know that's not enough, but it's a start." He lowered the microphone and walked slowly across the courtyard to where his mother waited beside her modest car, noticeably, not his father's luxury SUV. As he passed Mia, he paused. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for showing me who I really was, for giving me a chance to change." Mia could barely find her voice. She simply nodded, too stunned to respond. The moment Brandon's car pulled away, the entire school erupted into murmurs, debates, and stunned disbelief. An hour later, Patricia Morse arrived on campus, her face pale with rage as she stormed into Principal Edwards' office, but her legal threats fell flat now that Brandon's public confession had dismantled their entire case. With Brandon's testimony, the videos, and the flood of witness statements, Charles Walker's legal attack evaporated. Within weeks, the school board launched a full investigation into how so many complaints had been buried for years. By the end of the semester, Charles Walker was forced to resign from the school board. His law firm lost several major clients, and the Walkers quietly sold their mansion before leaving town altogether. In the weeks following Brandon's shocking public confession and the Walkers' sudden fall from grace, Lincoln High experienced a transformation unlike anything it had seen in its long history. The story of Mia Johnson and the downfall of Brandon Walker became more than just local news. It was shared across social media, featured on evening broadcasts, and even sparked discussions in school districts far beyond their small suburban town. For Mia, the whirlwind of attention was both surreal and exhausting. Where she once ate lunch alone, now her table was never empty. Students she had barely spoken to before now greeted her warmly, offering words of thanks or quietly sharing their own experiences of bullying. Each story painted a broader, darker picture of how Brandon's reign of intimidation had stretched far beyond anything Mia had realized. Yet beneath the applause and support, Mia remained grounded, constantly reminding herself that this journey had never been about fame or revenge. It was about survival, about dignity, about refusing to let anyone make her feel small again. Principal Edwards called a special assembly 2 weeks later. Standing on stage beside him were Mrs. Sanchez, Daniel, Emily, and Mia herself. Today marks a new chapter for Lincoln High. Principal Edwards announced to the packed auditorium. For too long, certain students abused their power while others suffered in silence. But thanks to the courage of one student who stood up not only for herself, but for others, Sway are taking real steps to ensure that this never happens again. He paused, allowing the applause to fill the room before continuing. Effective immediately, Lincoln High is implementing a comprehensive anti-bullying initiative. This program will include mandatory bystander intervention training, expanded counseling services, and clear, enforceable consequences for harassment, regardless of who you are or who your family knows. The students erupted in applause once again, many rising to their feet. Mia stood quietly, a slight blush coloring her cheeks as Daniel spoke next. "We may not all be able to defend ourselves physically like Mia," he said with a smile, "but we can all learn how to stand up, speak out, and support each other. Everyone here has a role to play." Emily stepped forward. "And for those who want to build confidence and learn how to protect themselves, Mia will be leading a self-defense club after school starting next week." The standing ovation that followed was deafening. The self-defense club began with 15 students but grew rapidly. In the first month alone, the number swelled to over 50. Some came eager to learn physical techniques, but many more came seeking what Mia offered beyond the moves. Confidence, awareness, and the understanding that true strength was not in violence but in restraint. She echoed her sensei's words to every new group. The goal isn't to hurt anyone, the goal is to protect yourself and others. Sometimes that means using force. Sometimes it means using your voice. Sometimes it means knowing when to walk away, but it always means refusing to let anyone turn you into a victim. Emily co-led the club, focusing on verbal self-defense, teaching students how to document harassment, when to report incidents, and how to build support networks. Daniel developed a parallel initiative that trains students on bystander intervention, educating them on how to safely and effectively step in when witnessing bullying. "We can't all be Mia," Daniel said at one assembly. "Not everyone has 8 years of judo experience, but we can all refuse to stay silent when we see injustice." The school culture began to shift. Teachers who had previously looked the other way now became active participants in the movement. Administrators implemented strict accountability measures, and students began reporting incidents that would have once gone unspoken. The phrase, "that's just how it is," no longer held power at Lincoln High. Meanwhile, Mia's academic life flourished. The college acceptance letters began arriving one by one, each bringing a fresh wave of relief and disbelief. She was accepted into 3 universities, all offering full scholarships. Her essay about standing up to bullying, leadership, and creating change resonated deeply with admissions officers who recognized not just her academic potential but her character. After careful deliberation, Mia chose State University, a decision that allowed her to stay close to her mother while pursuing both her pre-med studies and her passion for martial arts on the university's highly regarded judo team. Graduation day arrived faster than Mia ever imagined. As she stood in line waiting for her name to be called, she scanned the auditorium. Her mother sat front and center, tears streaming down her face. Behind her sat Master Lee, who had traveled from Chicago for the ceremony, his face beaming with pride like a grandfather, watching his granddaughter accomplish something extraordinary. When Principal Edwards announced her name, the auditorium erupted into thunderous applause. As Mia crossed the stage and accepted her diploma, she locked eyes briefly with her mother, who mouthed the words, I'm so proud of you." After the ceremony, Master Li found her outside, offering a rare but warm smile. "You honored everything I taught you," he said softly, "not by fighting, but by knowing when to fight and when to show mercy. That is true strength." Mia hugged him tightly, overwhelmed by the weight of what those words meant. But even as she looked forward to college and a bright future, the past was not entirely behind her. 6 months later, Mia received a handwritten letter from Brandon Walker. She sat quietly in her dorm room, reading it carefully. Brandon didn't ask for forgiveness. Instead, he updated her on his progress. He had begun volunteering at a youth center, speaking to kids about the dangers of bullying not from the perspective of a victim, but as someone who had once been the bully himself. He admitted that redemption was not something that could happen overnight, and maybe not fully at all, but he was committed to the long journey ahead. Mia folded the letter and placed it gently into a box of keepsakes. It wasn't closure, but it was something. Her senior year at Lincoln High had started with a desperate desire to remain invisible, to simply survive without drawing attention. But life had other plans. She had become visible in ways she never imagined, not through violence, not through intimidation, but through quiet courage and the refusal to let anyone define her worth. On her last visit back to Lincoln High before starting her sophomore year of college, Mia stopped by the self-defense club, which was now flourishing under Emily and Daniel's leadership. As she left the school building for the final time, she opened her locker far from where it all began and discovered a small card tucked inside. It read simply, "Thank you for showing us we don't have to be afraid anymore. Everyone who needed a hero." Mia smiled, tucking the card into her pocket as she walked toward her car. She hadn't set out to be anyone's hero. All she had ever wanted was to be left alone. But sometimes, standing up for yourself means standing up for everyone who can't. As her mother always said, education was the one thing no one could ever take away from her. But Mia had learned something even more valuable. Dignity was another, and sometimes, defending that dignity could change everything. A year after her high school graduation, Mia Johnson stood outside the same red brick building where everything had started. Lincoln High looked both familiar and distant now, like a snapshot frozen in time while the rest of her world had evolved. The summer breeze carried the laughter of students milling about the front lawn, some hurrying to class, others chatting casually under the wide oak trees that shaded the courtyard. But the atmosphere was different. There was an openness in the air, a confidence radiating from students who no longer moved in fearful patterns of hierarchy and intimidation. The culture shift that Mia had unintentionally sparked was no longer a fragile experiment, it was the new normal. She had come back for a special reason. Principal Edwards and Mrs. Sanchez had invited her to speak at the school's newly established Courage and Leadership Assembly, an annual event dedicated to celebrating student resilience and advocacy. As Mia walked through the main entrance, she was greeted by familiar faces. Emily was now president of the student council, her natural leadership blossoming over the past year, while Daniel had fully embraced his role as peer mentor, leading workshops for students on conflict resolution and advocacy. The Self-Defense Club, once just a small gathering of a few curious students, now boasted over 100 active members, complete with official school sponsorship, professional guest instructors, and a robust mentorship program for younger students. Mia paused in front of the old trophy case near the gym. A new display had been added. A plaque titled The Courage Initiative, featuring photos of the club members, articles from the media coverage, and a framed copy of Mia's graduation speech. Beneath it was a simple inscription, "Sometimes, one person's courage becomes everyone's strength." The auditorium filled quickly for the assembly. As Mia took the stage, she scanned the sea of faces many knew, some familiar, all watching her with respect that still felt almost surreal. She took a steadying breath before speaking. "A year ago, I was standing in these same hallways hoping nobody would notice me. I believed that staying invisible was the safest way to survive. I didn't want to make waves. I didn't want attention. I just wanted to get through high school quietly. But life had other plans." A soft ripple of laughter moved through the crowd, and Mia smiled. "What I learned is that sometimes, trying to stay invisible means allowing people to treat you like you don't matter. And when people believe you don't matter, they start taking things from you, your voice, your dignity, your confidence. But the truth is, no one has the right to take those things away from you. You have the power to stand up, not just for yourself but for others who can't yet find their voice." She paused, scanning the room. "What happened here wasn't just about me. It was about a culture that allowed people to believe they were untouchable, and a system that failed to protect the vulnerable. But together, we changed that. We proved that even the most toxic environments can transform when enough people refuse to stay silent. The applause that followed was warm and sincere, not just polite clapping but genuine appreciation for the weight of her words. As the assembly concluded, students lined up to speak with Mia, some sharing their own stories, others simply thanking her. One freshman girl, barely 5 feet tall with nervous eyes, clutched Mia's hand as she spoke softly. "You gave me courage. Last year, some older girls tried to mess with me, but I remembered what you said in your videos. I went to the principal, and they actually listened." Mia squeezed her hand gently. "You were brave. Never forget that." Later that evening, Mia sat across from Emily and Daniel at their favorite old coffee shop downtown, the same one where so many strategy sessions had taken place during the height of the legal battle. They laughed as they reminisced about how clueless and terrified they'd all been when everything started. "You know what the craziest part is?" Daniel said, sipping his latte. "If Brandon hadn't tried to escalate it legally, none of this might have happened. He turned a bullying incident into a full-blown movement." "Yeah," Emily added. "I guess in some twisted way, his worst choices created the best possible outcome for the school. And for him too, in a strange way," Mia said thoughtfully. "He's still volunteering at that youth center. We exchange letters sometimes. He never asks for forgiveness, but he updates me on his progress." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Do you believe him?" Mia nodded slowly. "I think I do. He knows it'll take a lifetime to rebuild the trust he destroyed. But he's trying." Emily leaned in, her expression more serious. "Do you ever wish it had gone differently, that you hadn't flipped him, that you just stayed invisible like you planned?" Mia smiled softly, glancing out the window at the glowing streetlights. Because staying invisible would have meant allowing him to keep hurting people. Sometimes the cost of speaking up is high, but the cost of staying silent is higher." A comfortable silence settled between them for a moment before Daniel grinned. "You know, Mia, you're kind of a legend now. They'll be telling your story at Lincoln High for generations." Mia laughed, shaking her head. "I don't want to be a legend. I just want people to know they never have to tolerate being treated like less than who they are." Months turned into another year. At State University, Mia excelled in her pre-med courses, balancing her studies with training on the university Judo team. She occasionally gave guest talks at local schools, sharing her experience not as a cautionary tale, but as a blueprint for resilience and advocacy. Word about Lincoln High's transformation spread to other districts. Educational conferences invited Principal Edwards and Mrs. Sanchez to speak about how to genuinely reform toxic school cultures. Lincoln High became a case study in how grassroots student-led advocacy, supported by brave leadership, could dismantle even deeply rooted systems of favoritism and fear. By her junior year of college, Mia received an unexpected email invitation. She had been nominated to serve on a state advisory board focused on school safety and anti-bullying policy reforms. She accepted without hesitation, understanding the responsibility that came with the role. Sitting in those meetings, surrounded by policymakers, educators, and former victims like herself, Mia felt the full arc of her journey. The quiet girl who once wanted to disappear had become a voice not only for herself, but for countless others who still struggled in silence. And yet, in her heart, she knew this wasn't the end of the story. Change was not a single event but an ongoing commitment. As long as schools existed, as long as power imbalances endured, there would always be a need for people willing to speak up, to listen, and to stand in the gap for those too afraid or too beaten down to do so. One evening, as Mia returned home from a board meeting, she found a small package waiting on her doorstep. Inside was a simple hand-carved wooden plaque. The note attached read, "For everything you gave us courage, strength, and hope. Thank you, your Lincoln High family." Mia smiled, running her fingers over the smooth wood, overwhelmed once again by the quiet impact one person could have when they refused to be silent. She placed the plaque on her bookshelf next to her textbooks, judo medals, and legal advocacy materials, a reminder that sometimes the smallest acts of defiance could spark the greatest waves of change. And as she sat by her desk that night, preparing for another early morning class, Mia whispered to herself the words that had carried her from that first terrifying day at Lincoln High to everything that came after. Never start a fight, but always know how to end one.